See, there we go. There we go. So, hey everybody, how's it going? So Doug here. I've got a new camera that I'm going to be unboxing and doing demonstration for. Before I get started, though, I kind of threw a couple things together here at the last minute. So I just put on a wireless mic instead of using my desktop mic for this one. Let me know if it sounds okay. I actually haven't previewed it to hear it, see if it's any good or not. So let me know if there's something I need to tweak, or if I even need to switch back over to the other mic. So anyway, let me know in the comments. Speaking of comments, I will be taking questions as we go and looking at comments, and so when I go to talk about them, it should show up on screen just like that. So yeah. And that's the other thing I threw together at the last minute. I decided 15 minutes ago that I was actually going to do comments on this video using graphics, H2R graphics. So that's why I'm a couple minutes late, just getting all that ready to go. So okay, as people saying it sounds good, good deal. So yeah, at some point I will get a better lav for the studio. Right now I'm using one of my Sony's, and the ones I have are omnidirectional, so they're going to pick up other sounds in the room. At some point I'll get a cardioid. Anyway, okay, so the camera I'm going to be unboxing today is Sony PXW-Z200. I ordered this a while ago, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that, and it showed up on my doorstep this morning. Ordered from B&H. And here it is. So we're going to go through the process of pulling it out of the box. I have not turned it on yet. The only thing I did is pull the battery out of the box and charge that, so I can actually plug it in and use it. So you guys are going to be learning along with me. So yeah, let me know what you think as we go. So all right, so I see a bunch of questions already coming in, and you guys, please post your questions in the chat. I'll be doing my best to try and answer all those. But before I get to those, I want to actually just pull the camera out of the box and power it on, and maybe go through a couple of the menus or something before we actually get to those questions. So someone says pretty noisy audio. So it's an omnidirectional mic in an imperfect room, so it's not going to be amazing. I could switch to the other mic if we need to. But anyway, okay. So with that said, let's actually just dive right on in. So let's go to overhead cam and open up this box. So we got pretty much all cardboard protection. So trying to be environmentally responsible. So, and pull the actual camera out, and then a box of accessories, and then get this main box off the table here, and pull the camera out of its protection. This is a new material I hadn't seen them Sony use before on their cameras. It's almost like paper. So anyway, it's not the foam, thin foam that we've seen in the past. All right, well, there it is. All right, so switch to camera 3, kind of show the camera. Maybe overhead's a better shot for that. Let's go back to overhead. I'll actually go overhead with me in the corner there. It's me in the spotlight. Okay, so, all right, so I noticed one of the comments is it says it's quite small actually. Well, I grabbed one of my 150s, Z150s, so we can compare size-wise, and it is smaller. It is actually smaller than the Z150. It's a little shorter, a little not quite as wide. After somebody had mentioned that it was similar to the 280, I was thinking it was going to be a lot bigger and heavier, but I think the 200 is actually a little bit wider than 150. Interesting. I haven't looked at the actual specs to know what the actual weight or dimensions of it are, but it feels smaller and feels a little bit lighter than my 150, which honestly is a little bit surprising. So anyway, so maybe have both of them open here and we'll talk about some of the similarities and differences. So one of the things that's kind of been awkward about the 150 is the menu button is up top. And on this one, all you have on the top is the playback controls there. So improvement there, that's for sure. That's always awkward to try and reach when the camera's up high on a tripod. And then we've got our zoom lever. On the 150, it's just an on-off switch. This one's variable, very nice. Variable speed zoom on there. You've got the record stop button here with a lock on it. The old one does not have a lock. 2 custom function buttons. There's even a little joystick there. That's pretty cool. Nothing like that on this guy, on 150. All right, so take a look at this side. There's not a lot on this side on either camera, but we've got XLR microphone inputs on both. On this one, to put the line mic and phantom power switches right next to the XLR, which is nice because on this one they're on the other side. And then we've got the 1/8 inch microphone input up there as well with plug-in power. And I don't believe this one has that at all. If it does, I've never used it. Yeah, don't look, it does. Come over here to the back. We've got the Wank 2.5mm remote control, and nothing on the back of this one, or the side of this one. Okay, and look at the actual back here. So I can't set it up. I've got a microphone on there. On this one, we've got SDI and time code there, and then there's HDMI and USB-C, and then down here is the Ethernet port, and that can be used for camera control and live streaming. I'll have to grab an iPad and actually try out the camera control. And then we've got power input here, and then the card slots, and then the battery release there. Anything else worth mentioning? Looks like probably not. Compared to the 150, it's got your SDI and a composite video output of all things, and analog line level output, HDMI output, USB, micro USB, that's for transferring footage, and also there's a composite video output on that as well. And then you got the power jack there. And then over on this side is the headphone jack, the LANC connection there for remote control, and then the SD card slots on that one. Okay. All right, and let's take a look at the left side. so new one. Our screen is right there, and it has peaking, zebra, and an assignable button there on that, and that flips around all the different ways, and when you're not using it, flip it back, which is a little weird because it just sort of floats there. There's nothing to sort of retain it in that place. Oh, got a little that blue tape here holding the zoom ring in place. Okay, get that out of the way. All right, so a little bit of differences here. So 150, focus, zoom, and iris. It actually has a dedicated iris ring there. This one has zoom, focus, zoom, and then a little tiny wheel for iris rather than the big ring in there. Big addition here has got the variable ND filter, and you control that with that. Iris on off, neutral density, fixed or variable, switch that there. Neutral density auto, which is a pretty cool feature. The old one only has 3 neutral density filters. They're fixed. So switches for ISO gain, white balance shutter, slow and quick. These numbered buttons, by the way, are all programmable. You can have them set to whatever you want. Button for controlling some network stuff, night shot, which is being able to shoot in darkness, picking up infrared. Then we've got audio controls here for the first 2 channels. This camera does record 4 channels, where this one does 2. And we've got a switch here, low, medium, high for the gain. White balance, we've got A, B, and preset, and then a white balance set button, menu button, wheel for navigating the button, and the menu, cancel back button, and then the power switch. Up on the front, push on off for autofocus. Or sorry, push auto. So if you're in manual focus and you want the camera to quickly autofocus, you press that button there, and then it's on off switch for the autofocus there as well. So yeah, it's actually quite a bit different in terms of the layout. I've never been bothered by the layout of the 150, but this feels more in keeping with some other higher end cameras, so a bit of an upgrade there. All right, and then in the front, obviously we've got the lens hood. I think it might actually be smaller, so let me double check here. Yeah, that might be smaller. So let's see, does it say what size that is? It says the f-stop range is 2.8 to 4.5. And then the focal length 7.7 to 154.2 millimeters. So that works out to 20 times zoom. I don't see the filter size on there. I think I read somewhere at 72, whereas this one is, I believe, 67. So anyway, enough comparisons. So, but I am surprised that the new one is a little smaller and lighter. I was not expecting that. All right, so let's see if you guys had any questions about physical aspects of it. Oh yeah, I'll get rid of the timer. So thanks everyone. So I forgot that was there. That was where I was testing the over the key here. So all right, current time of day. Bye bye. There it is. Gone. All right. All right. So let me go back to social. All right. I'm not seeing much by the way of questions about physical. So anyway, I'll go through all the questions later. All right. So let me actually throw a battery on here and plug in the SDI output, and then I will navigate through the menu. Let me go back to overhead. I'll navigate through the menu here, but I gotta figure out how to get the menu to output. But for the time being, it's gonna want me to set up, yeah, that feature drives me nuts. That's gonna be one of the first things to change. So, okay. Yeah, this does work. All right, so my time zone is Denver. Today is, why that joystick is not easy to use. Use the wheel instead, yeah. Okay, oh, there, okay, I had to select it first. All right, September. Today is the 23rd. I'll get this set. So you guys are seeing first time setup on this thing too. Okay, and then time we are at, let's see, 15:48. Yeah, you have to, there you go. So press 15, and we'll call it 49, so we're, okay. All right, finish. Okay, now go through the menu here. Ooh, totally different than what I've seen in the past. Okay, so press and hold for full menu. There we go. Okay. Alrighty, monitoring. Output display on. Yep, that did it. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here. There we go. So now you guys can actually see what the camera is displaying. So let me go. Oh, let me actually get out of the menu first. And there we go. So first image from the new camera, and where are we out of focus? Let me see. Are we on auto or manual here? No, okay, that was auto. Okay, it's just out of focus on the bottom because depth of field. All right, so looks like we've got iris set to auto. So press. How do we get out of that? I think it's the camera on full auto. Yeah, it is. Okay, there we go. So there we go. That's better. Alrighty. So iris. There we can adjust that. I'm gonna have to. I'll drop that to f4. Yeah, there we go. All right, and the gain. I'll put that up on medium. Shutter speed. Where's that button on this one? There it is. Shutter. Have to press and hold. Oh, yeah, there we go. Alrighty, so yeah, 1/60th. Now, all right, now let's make sure that we get the right video format here. So I'm shooting in 4K today. So let's see where is that in the shooting menu. This menu is totally foreign to me, so I'm learning this first. This is the first time I'm seeing it. And nope, not in there. User menu. Yeah, I didn't think it would be in this one. Back, okay. Project. Base setting, shooting mode, custom. Okay, that's fine. Record format. Okay, shooting 4K, 60 FPS. I'm gonna put it on 2997 because that's actually what I'm shooting for this live stream. So there we go. Quality high, codec, XAVC, try 422. All right, that's still working. Okay. All right, we got, all right. I'm getting ahead of myself. I was gonna go through all the different menus here. All right, so we got the user menu, which is, yeah, setting, base setting there, choose HDR, setting up the focus, setting night shot settings, auto framing, set the assignable buttons, the purpose of the multifunction dial, file related features, configuring peaking. You guys like peaking? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments if you actually like shooting with peaking, and or zebra. Okay, all right. Simultaneous record. Off, and we got proxy recording. So this, as well as my older camera, allow you to shoot and record different formats on the two different card slots. So if you wanted to shoot a lower resolution on the second card for proxy use, you can do that. HDMI record control. I don't usually bother with that. Auto framing. That's the feature where it'll zoom in, crop, and follow someone around. But I found out that when you have that enabled, the SDI output doesn't work. So only useful if you're recording in camera. Or it didn't mention anything about the HDMI not working, so maybe the HDMI does allow you to do that. All right, okay, yeah. So, okay, here's the paint menu. So Scene file. Okay, you can store different scenes. Base look. Yeah, that might be the LUT feature. Okay, paint settings. Okay, set the black. Nice. Set the master level and the red and blue, where those are at. Knee settings. Very cool. So my Z150 had that as well. Detail settings. Looks like it's set to 0. I'll have to see what that looks like. I'll shoot some test footage and share that. Okay, so matrix. Nice. You can actually tweak the look color-wise. So that's pretty nice. And multi-matrix. I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to read the manual to find out what that's all about. Okay, time code. We can do preset, record run, free run. There you go. Time code format, drop frame. Nice. Okay, that's kind of what we use here in the U.S. Display time code, user bit. I've never used user bit settings. HDMI time code out. So basically, whether you include the time code data as part of the HDMI output. Clip name format. All right. Okay, and then monitoring. Turn the outputs on and off. Set the output format. All right. So I guess that's okay. There we go. Yeah. So that's been outputting interlace basically, PSF to my switcher, and the switcher has been up converting. So now it should be in 4K. Output display on off, so we can choose what features are shown on screen. Nice, lots of options there. Choose which markers you want, and color, and then LCD viewfinder settings. I did not see the one to. You just can't see that on camera, but like this is set up where if your eye approaches the viewfinder, it automatically turns off the screen. I hate that setting. Okay, peaking, zebra. All right, thumbnail, which is basically playback. Some technical data. So okay, there you go. We got color bars, different types. Very cool. So I think it defaulted. I think that's what. Yeah, it defaulted to that. Neutral density dial. Tally settings, touch operation, because it does have a touch screen. The old one did not. Record review, so watch the last 3 seconds. Zoom type, let's do optical with clear image zoom. There we go. Oh, I love clear image zoom. Handle zoom is variable. High speed is 8, low is 3. I'm going to turn the low down to 1. I love a good crawl. Speed zoom. I'll have to read up on that. I'm not sure what that is. Menu settings, okay. Fan control, nice. You have control over when the fan comes on. That's cool. Distance display, yeah, leave it on meters. That's fine. I can deal with that. Video light settings, camera battery alarm. Oh yeah, if the battery gets low. Camera DC in. So yeah, if the voltage on the DC in gets low, you get an alert there. Okay, network setup. Setup for mobile app. I assume that's probably the monitoring control. So, yeah, LAN type. Okay, gotcha. So we can choose whether wireless or wired. Obviously, I don't have anything plugged in just yet. USB tethering, that would be for streaming through a cell phone. Got Bluetooth, ability to transfer files. Settings for streaming, so there's your RTMP, SRT, very cool. I could technically be streaming from the camera. Well, that looks like a few maintenance things. So the language, some accessibility settings, the clock, reset everything, hours meter, 0. And software version is version 1. Okay. Alrighty. So that's kind of the gist of that. Let's see, the white balance. Oh, let's see. I did not see that in the menu, so how do we actually set the white balance here? So if I set it on, yeah, so we got two presets there, yeah, and then, okay, that's auto white balance. I didn't see it in the menu. Do you guys see that in the menu where you can set the actual white balance? So that be in paint? Probably not. No, not. shooting. Oh, there's white color temperature. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do. What am I doing here? This is my Studio 56, if I remember right. Set the tint to 0, because I don't know what it's supposed to be. I can get that set up properly later. Alrighty. Okay, yeah, I must have missed these settings. So focus settings, slow and quick motion, so noise suppression, nice. Steady shot, standard, okay. All right, cool. All right, so that's the menus, and you guys can see, I'll flip this around. It's definitely a different color than my other cameras, but I might have my white balance wrong. It's tough to say. I'll do some testing later on, see how it compares color-wise with my others. So anyway, so that's kind of it for the walkthrough. Take a brief look at what's in the accessories box. So we've got warranty, battery information, actual manual, which they have not made available online yet, by the way. I've looked and looked and looked. They have a, I don't know, half-baked manual on their site. All right, over here is, it's gonna be a battery charger. Yep, there we go. And then that's your eye cup. There you go. I never use those, by the way. And then we've also got, what's that? Oh, that's the sunshade to go over the LCD. Okay. All right. Switch back. Oh. All right. That looks like power cord. Yep. And that's certainly the power adapter right there. Yep. And then this one was the battery, which I pulled out earlier. So, all right. Well, since I'm going to be playing with it for a while, I'm going to plug in the AC power on this. Okay, so that. By the way, for anybody who cares, I'm live streaming today using the Web Presenter 4K. So anybody who's followed that saga, if the stream goes down, we'll know why. So it was a little bit in too much crunch time to set up my Teradek Flex Prism I could use for my last stream. All right, so plugged in, and plug in the back of the camera. There we go. And is that long enough? Close enough. Okay. All righty. So let's start taking some questions here. All right. Do you see a scenario where we can unload our FX6s and replace them with PXW-Z200s for production and live streams? Well, that depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, they're very different cameras. The FX6 is really designed more as a cinema type camera. So, you know, it's got the larger sensor. It's going to have the menus and everything that are a part of the camera are going to be designed for that particular workflow. The accessories you get for it are going to be designed for that workflow. This is designed as run and gun / live streaming camcorder. It's meant to be quick and easy and provide a good quality image and just be super quick in that sort of situation. Biggest difference between the two is going to be the size of the sensor. So this one has what they call a 1-inch sensor. It's technically a fair bit smaller, but they call it a 1-inch sensor. And the FX6 has a full frame, so a 35 millimeter full frame sensor, which is a lot larger, which means it does capture a lot more light, but it also means that you're going to be a lot more likely to be in situations where your shallow depth of focus, so your subject is out of focus. These are designed so that it's easy to keep your subject in focus. It's a very different workflow than what you see with the cinema camera. So if you're shooting events, if you're shooting sporting events, whatever, and you need to have a camera that's going to stay in focus, it's going to be easy to set up, it's not going to require a whole arsenal of lenses, then this may be the right choice for that. If you want to have more of that cinematic film type look, then the FX6 is going to be your camera. So it all depends on what you're going to be doing and as to what's going to be right for you. So, alrighty. Do you have any length recommendations for use of the Z200? Looks like the text is being cut off there. So, well, I mean, I haven't tried link on this yet. In the past, my recommendation anytime you're using link is to find some of those controllers that have push button controls. So you're pressing a button to zoom in or out rather than a rocker. And there's a very specific reason for that. I get criticized for my choice of push button rather than rockers a lot, but it's really because people don't understand how those work on this class of camera. So the link protocol only allows for 7 speeds in forward and 7 speeds in reverse for your zoom. If you're dealing with a rocker, you can't ever tell which of those speeds you're on, and it's really easy to accidentally move from one speed to another. So if you're trying to hold a nice, smooth, constant zoom with your controller, it's a lot harder to do that with the rockers because you don't have any sort of tactile feedback to let you know when you're in one speed range versus another. And I've seen time and time again with people who use the rockers where they'll be zooming at one speed and then it get faster and then slow down. It just doesn't look good, and that's why I've gone to the push button ones. So they're getting really hard to find at this point. They haven't been manufactured for a few years now, but if you can find one, and I don't beat you to it, I find that they work better when you're using link as your protocol. For other types of zoom controller protocols or whatever, the rockers do work better, and I prefer the rockers when I'm not using link. So, yeah. All right, so I'm very curious about the low light capabilities of this camera and how it works with Monitor Control app. Appreciate if you can try this. Well, low light, it's kind of hard to do a proper test of that in this time frame. But Monitor Control app, I can try and pull that up and see how that goes. So, all right, so we've got Ryan suggesting a particular model of Manfrotto link controller. So I'm not familiar with that one in particular. I've used some of their other ones, and most of those are rockers, and so yeah, I'm just not in love with them. So yeah. Alrighty, so I'm going to skip the good morning, good afternoon, want messages for now, but thank you guys for sharing those. I do appreciate letting people know, letting me know where you're watching from. I like knowing that I have a worldwide audience and having an impact worldwide. All right, I wonder if the Z150 can record a 4K editing file to one card and 1080p archived file to the other. The FX30 can't, but the XF605 can. So that is the well, I mean, the proxy file is normally what you'd be talking about there, but if you're talking about a high-quality copy for archive, that's not what that feature is meant for. Very often the proxy is okay, but yeah, it's not meant as a high quality. It's meant as a small, easy-to-edit file rather than just an alternate high-quality copy as well. Looking forward to hearing more about this camera. We have a couple of Panasonic 350s that have been great workhorses for us, but we're looking to replace them in about a year or so. So yeah, I mean, we're not going to be able to really get into what the quality of this camera is like as part of this discussion, but I will be definitely be doing some testing over the next little while. Hopefully I'll have an event here before too long where I can actually put this in its paces, through its paces, in a real work scenario and be able to get a better feel for what this camera is going to be like. So I have high hopes for it, though. I mean, Sony traditionally makes great camcorders, and they've had a long time to work on this one. So the 150 came out in 2016, so it's 8 years now since they've released a new camera at this point in their product lineup. So, okay, alrighty. Okay, so next question. Strike the timer. Yeah, okay, did that. So, actually, that's quite small. Actually, yeah. I'm like I said, I was actually pretty surprised how small the camera actually is. I was expecting it to be bigger and heavier. So, no HDMI out. Yeah, it does have HDMI out. So HDMI is right above the SDI on there. So the new screen is great because you can have it facing out from the side. I regularly like it to stand beside a camera and monitor. So yeah, it's there we go. So there's that screen. You do get a little bit more flexibility with this than you have with the other one, but it's still a little weird that that's the closed position because it actually does go in a little bit more, and yeah, rather odd. So, but that's definitely a much higher resolution screen than the old one. So yeah, and the fact that it's touch is pretty cool. You're actually able to touch on things that you want to stay in focus, which the 150 did not. Are you worried about the flip-out screen not being protected during transport and pulling it in or out of a case? It seems like a strange design choice. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm that concerned about it, because I mean I'll have a case that protects it. I haven't decided what that's going to be yet, but yeah, I will definitely have a case that protects that screen. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. So is there a port for zoom controller? Yes, that's the link port that's on the lower left. Right here, back. So, yep. So that's for the zoom controller. All right. How do you handle not being able to do camera control and tally with your Blackmagic? Doesn't bother me. That's never bothered me. I've been using Sony cameras ever since I got back into. Well, I've been using Sony cameras for live production. Pretty much all along since I started doing it in the late 90s. So first camera, I mean, my first camera was a Panasonic, but I've stuck with Sony pretty much ever since. So my second camera that I got that I was using for live production was the VX2000. I actually still have it. It's just in the closet, not too far away. So I loved that camera. That camera was great. And then after that one, I went to the Sony HDR FX1s, which were their first consumer HD camera. So. I love camcorders, but what should I do on Ronin stabilizers? Do they have one that will fit this form factor? I don't even know. So it has stabilization, some stabilization built right in. It's not as good as something like a Ronin, that's for sure. But it does have reasonably decent stabilization built right in. Seems like a great camera, but for the price, for that price, may get a good PTZ or a mirrorless cam with Middle Things APC Mini for unarmed cam. So I have moved away from using PTZs. I hardly ever use them anymore, and one of the reasons for that is like it doesn't save me personnel. I still have to have nearly as many people as I would otherwise in most situations. There's obviously going to be some where a PTZ isn't going to require somebody to man it full time. But PTZs, you're spending a lot more money for equal image quality compared to another camera. Like for example, so I'll use the 150 as an example. The Z150, when I first started selling it, was $3,600, but it dropped to $3,000 not too long after it came out. The PTZ version of this camera is $10,000. So if you want to have a cohesive look between PTZ and non-PTZ, you really need to be buying cameras from the same manufacturer that are in the same family, have the same or very similar sensor. And I was never going to be able to justify the $10,000 for that Sony. It's BRC X1000, what the model number is, and it's still their current model. But I was never going to be able to justify the cost of that thing. And their lower end ones never looked anywhere near as good, not even close. So I Yeah, it was always a compromise. The PTZs were always a compromise compared to my other cameras. But in terms of mirrorless cameras, kind of mentioned this a moment ago, you're dealing with a larger sensor, which means you're dealing with a shallower depth of field, which means you're going to be driving your camera operators crazy if you've got a moving subject, because they got to try and maintain focus. These cameras are designed to make that easy. So those mirrorless cameras, they're designed for more of a cinema type workflow or photography. You know, you've got a lot of those cameras that are specifically designed for shooting photos, and they come with photo lenses, which means you're not getting the parfocal capability. You're dealing with focus breathing. You've got a lot of issues that come with using photo lenses for video. Whereas something like this, the lens is very clearly designed for video work. And so I just saw a question mark pop up if the lens on this is parfocal. Yeah, all the lenses on the Sony camcorders are parfocal. That's like one of their most fundamental basic features that they include out of the gate. So yeah. Button layout, menus, and screen layout is similar to the Sony FX6. That is true. And I really believe that this camera was designed by the same group that did the FX6. So, yeah. So you check optics on small objects. I don't have a great subject to shoot in here. This is just my studio. But switch over to that camera. Maybe zoom in on one of the windows on this monitor. You can't tell much by that, but except that the resolution on that display is it's not very high. So that is a 4K multi-view, by the way. So anyway, but yeah, so I don't really have I don't know what the minimum focus distance on this thing is, but let me just zoom in on this guy. Oh, minimum focus is farther than that. Yeah, it's going out of focus. So, all right, yeah, this is not the right place to be checking the quality of the image. That's something that I'm going to have to save for another time. But yeah, alrighty. Question from Southern Africa. Any experience with the Canon XF605? How would you compare this Sony to the Canon, trying to determine what to buy for our church? I don't personally have any experience with the XF605. I've heard some really good things about it. I know that most people who have it are very happy with it. But in terms of how the two cameras compare, I really can't tell you. That's outside my realm of expertise. Doing camera comparisons for individual cameras is something that's really hard for me, because I only buy the cameras that I'm going to be using for production, and I'm not going to be buying cameras from different manufacturers because you can't intercut between them. So the color rendering, the way they handle exposure differences are very different from one manufacturer to another, and very different from camera family to another, even within one manufacturer. So I don't mix camera brands when I'm shooting. So that makes it very difficult for me to test cameras from Canon, Panasonic, Blackmagic, JVC, whoever, fairly. Because unless I have enough of them to handle one of my events, I'm just not going to try and do it. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. The manual said it can't record 4K 30 H.265, only 60 FPS. I'm referring to the Z200. I'm pretty sure that it does do the 30 frame. So yeah. Alrighty, okay. Jazzy, I use peaking regularly. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm one of these people who likes to use peaking as well. I don't always, but yeah. So I don't use peaking often. I'm on a Canon and love the Star Wars-esque focus guide when I do manual focus. I also tend to use false colors more than zebras. Yeah. So both great tools. So yeah. Yeah, not gonna say one's better than the other. So one of the reasons I use peaking is because these screens are never full resolution. compared to what you're shooting. And so if you rely on just what you're seeing on the screen without something to assist, you're going to be out of focus sometime. So and that's kind of been my big reason for using peaking quite a bit. And then zebra, not obvious. I try to avoid clipping on things. Yeah, just got my NX800 at noon today. Took 3 hours to figure out how to get into the main menu by holding the menu button for a couple of seconds. I'm new to camcorders. So fortunately, they do have a little thing on there, so this is Sony's way of saying press and hold the button. Instead of being a dot, it'll be kind of an elongated dash. So if you look for that logo various places on Sony products, I mean, whenever you see that, that basically means press and hold. So why do all these Sony cameras have this stupid feature that display shuts off when using the viewfinder? So that is so that when you're holding it, you can just put your eye up there and the viewfinder comes on. It's a battery saving feature, so you're not running the screen and the viewfinder at the same time. So it does have a button on here on the side, VF LCD. Let's see, there's a little button right there. You press that, and then that turns off the feature. So now, switch back to my overhead here. So now, if I put my hand in front of the viewfinder, it doesn't shut off the LCD. So you just press that button on the side, turn that feature off. So yeah, and my 150 was the same. Some of their other cameras don't have the button there, so you have to go in the menu to find that. But that's what's going on there. So all right. Per year, CF Express Type A cards work great, and my NX800 manual is useless. So speaking of CF Express, I did grab one, bring it down. So if you guys haven't seen CF Express cards before, they're about the same size as an SD card, a little smaller than an SD card actually, but they're a lot faster. And the reason this camera has the option to use CF Express in addition to SD is because when you're shooting 4K at 60 frames per second with intra-frame compression, or if you're shooting 4K 120 frames per second, you kind of need this kind of speed. So for most formats on this camera, you can shoot with SD cards, but if you want those higher end features, the higher bit rates, you do have to have the CF Express. And so I'm actually going to just pop that in there so I don't forget. So it looks like I'm going to need to format here. So we'll see if we can, is there a quick, yeah, there it is right there. So format, quick format, okay. Quick format done. Okay, nice. So that card will give me 212 minutes at 4K 30, which is what I've currently got it set to right now. Okay, all right. Alrighty, see. Cool that they include a sunshade for the LCD. Yes, that is a nice feature. That's super useful whenever you're shooting outdoors. Thinking of taking a Canon R5C for photos and videos. What do you guys think? Of course, we're broadcasting in the studio. What we watch is top. So for R5C, I'm sure it does great photos, but it's designed more for cinema type workflow again. These things can be made to work for live events, but not necessarily designed for that. And there's going to be some compromises there. So, all right, does it do shutter angle versus shutter speed? I have to assume so. That's a pretty standard feature for Sony. Do you get any noise or grain on 12 dB gain? I don't know. Let's see if we can do that. So let's put it on high gain. And I'm not going to be able to tell. You guys will have to tell me on this. I don't have a full resolution monitor that I can look at right now. But let me zoom in on something very dark here in the room. Can you? Let's see. Yeah, I guess I have to show you what I'm. There we go. So, can you see much by the way of noise on that shot? I'll review all this stuff later when I have a proper monitor hooked up and have time to record some footage and actually take a look at it. But what do you see? Let me know. All right, crop factor between this camera and full frame is 3 times. That sounds about right, yeah. What are the base ISOs? So it has 2. This camera, its primary base ISO is 1600. But if you put it in the custom, I believe it's the custom mode, you can get that down to 250. So you got those 2 options. So yeah. Can you show how the rolling variable ND filter works? Is it all auto or can you manually roll it? Okay, all right, so you can absolutely manually do it. So let me get the comment there off the screen and switch back to that camera. And let's see, we'll do auxiliary picture-in-picture. So there they're in the corner. And let's see, we want to do the variable ND. So I'll leave it on 12 dB gain. I'm going to switch over to ND, variable ND, ND on. Okay, so you see that the filter actually moves in front of the sensor there. And then from there, I just rotate the wheel, and you can see how it's darkening the image. So that's not altering the gain. That's actually changing the density of the filter in front of the sensor. So anywhere from 1/4, which is 2 stops, down to went away. Oh, and okay, it's in the lower portion of the screen. So 161, oh, 160, it goes down to 1/128. So yeah, pretty dark. So 1/128 to 7 stops, I believe. So yeah, but what you can do is I can press the ND auto button here. So press and hold. There you go. So now it's going to automatically adjust the neutral density. So if I take and I shove it, I shoot up into my light here, you'll see that it's darkening on the neutral density filter, and it does that smoothly instead of having discrete jumps like you have on most neutral density filters that are out there. So then I come back over here, you'll see it brighten back up again. And the speed that it does that is actually something that's configurable in the menu. So if you wanted to change the neutral density setting faster or slower, you can adjust that in the menu. So, all right. Do you think the Z200 would be good for indie documentary filmmaking? I currently use a Panasonic S5 II, but don't really like the type of camera too much. This would be a fantastic camera for documentary filmmaking. That's one of the primary uses for these things. And you find big organizations using cameras like this, not necessarily this model, but cameras this form factor, a portion of the product range for doing documentary work. So yeah, if you're looking for it, this would be a great camera for that. The S5 II is a great camera too, but if that's not working for you for what you're doing, this may be a better fit. Alrighty, I love camcorders, but for uncontrolled shoots like live events, I find them so much more flexible and usable than a mirrorless and cinema camera. That's generally going to be true. I mean, you're using a tool for what it's meant for, right? So it's not. You're not putting a square peg in a round hole like you are with a mirrorless or cinema type camera. So yeah. All right. And you can mix them with your other Sonys. Expect latency differences between models. So I don't know that yet. If I can get this set up where it matches the color of my other cameras, yeah, absolutely, I'll start to incorporate this into my workflow. If not, I mean, this is made by a different group in Sony compared to my 150s. There's a chance, a distinct chance, that I can't make this match color-wise to my other cameras. But if I can't do that, then I will not be using this for my multi-camera events, and I'll save it for events where I only need single camera until the time where I have enough of these to actually use them for my multi-camera events. So we'll see. In terms of latency, I expect it's going to be roughly the same. And my 150s are about 2 frames, which is about as low as you get for most cameras these days. You might find some that are 1. But all cameras that have digital processing in them these days, you're basically going to have at least 1 frame of latency on the output compared to what it's picking up on the sensor. So difference of 1 or 2 frames is not going to be a big deal for most events. So yeah. All right, regarding low light, I feel important to note that 3-chip cameras capture 3 times the amount of light compared to 1-chip cameras with the same sensor size. That is the key, though. It has to be the same sensor size. In this product line, the Sony Z280 is a 3-chip camera, but it's also, I believe it's a 1/3 inch. So the diagonal measurement on it is roughly a third of what it is for this. So and when I was doing comparisons between the two Z280 and the Z150, Z150 was a little bit noisier, but the difference wasn't as stark as some people had made it out to be, and not as big as what I've heard some people online claiming it to be. So I was just kind of shocked that the difference in image quality between the two cameras was not bigger than it was. Because I mean, I've been looking for years, like what do I move up to? What's my next camera after the 150? 150 has been great for them, and I've loved them, but I've always known that it's not the best camera. I mean, there are better cameras out there. But I've been trying to figure out for a long time what my next level of camera was going to be. And after I rented the Z280 and spent a week with it, I very clearly could tell that it was not going to be enough of an upgrade to justify more than double the price. The performance improvement in performance was just not there. So, but you know, this camera is clearly a step up from the 150, almost across the board. I'm hoping that this is going to be good enough to hold me off for a little while, because going up to the next level, that's where you're talking about getting into like ENG style cameras, and you're getting into B4 lenses, and you're talking about a huge jump in price. So instead of $3,000 to $4,000 per camera, you're at $6,000 to $20,000 for the body, and then as much or quite a bit more for even a single decent lens. And then if you want to have a proper camera chain behind it with your CCU and your remote control, you're at $100,000 per camera by the time it's all said and done, instead of $4,000 per camera. So yeah, it's a big jump, and I've been trying to find something that sort of bridges the gap between those, and I didn't find that the Z280 was good to be good enough for that. So. Alrighty, how are camcorders on gimbals? Well, if you get the right ones designed for that, they work just fine. But we want to get one that's made for a camera like this, not just throw something that's made for a DSLR or mirrorless or whatever. I like your background. Thank you. It's actually just a gray wall with two lights on it, so nothing fancy. I tried to go with something very simple here compared to my very complicated, busy background that I have when I'm shooting in my trailer. So funny, I was going to say I almost want to use this camera with a Middle Things APCR Mini and a Ronin 4. So yeah. All right, is the lens parfocal? Yes, it is. I've heard RS4 Pro works with XF605, which is similar form factor to the Z200. I've never personally tried it though. So yeah, so another stabilizer there. Would you say that it color matches to all other Sony cameras, or would you say the sensor is a new breed? I can't tell just yet. Obviously, I can't. I don't have the settings set here, and it's not even shooting the same direction as my other cameras, and most of the lights in this room are facing this direction, not that direction. So it's going to require some controlled, a controlled situation, controlled environment, to be able to get a better idea for what the image quality and color rendering on this camera are like compared to the others. But from what I've read, the color rendering on this is very similar to the FX6. So if you want to get a better idea for what that looks like, you can go search for some sample footage from the FX6 and get a rough idea for what it's going to look like. But I will have some sample footage for this before too long. I've got an event tomorrow, but I won't need this camera for that, and I don't have anything else on the schedule for a little bit. The next event I have on my schedule that's multi-camera, we're not going to be using these. We're going to be using probably FX9s on that one. So anyway, we'll see. Sony FR7 PTZ is my end goal, although you can make the same thing with the APC Ronin ZX-E1 for a fraction of the price and arguably more useful. So yeah, that FR7 is a pretty cool camera. PTZ that allows you to swap in your own lenses. That's a great idea. I'm surprised we haven't seen more people doing that. Traditionally, what people do is an ENG camera on a full motion head, and you're talking big money for something that's good for that. Okay, the lens is not constant aperture, right? It is not. So the lens on this one is 2.8 at the wide and 4.5 all the way zoomed in, which for me means that I will be shooting at 4.5 or maybe 4.0 depending on where it makes that transition. And that's how I've handled my 150s. They're 2.8 at the wide end, but I always shoot them at f4 because they do f4 throughout the entire zoom range, which means as I'm zooming in and out, it's not changing aperture. So yeah. B4 Pro lenses are designed for broadcast more than the handy cam style camera. But yeah, that's true, but they're also way more money. So yeah. What functions are there under Bluetooth options? You think those fit on DJI RS4? So someone else mentioned the RS4 a minute ago, RS4 Pro. Maybe it will. I don't have one of those, so I can't check. But yeah, Bluetooth options. We can take a quick look at that if we want. So go back over to this right here. Let's go in the menu. Press and hold. All right. So that was under network, I believe. Yeah, Bluetooth. So turn Bluetooth on and off, manage which pair of devices you have, and then get your device address, and then pair with the device. So I'm not 100% sure what the Bluetooth is used for. Maybe for the camera monitoring control, but you certainly wouldn't be able to do live video over Bluetooth. There's not even close to enough bandwidth for that. But it's probably mostly for camera control. Yeah. Okay. Have you tried a Blackmagic Micro Studio camera with MFT to B4 adapter and a broadcast lens? I have not. I've not gotten one of the newer Micro Studio cameras. I bought one of their older ones, and it was horrible. That was a horrible camera. And if you were to do an adapter, a B4 to MFT, it would be even worse. B4 has a smaller image circle than Micro Four Thirds. And the big problem with that camera was that its light sensitivity was just abysmal. You had to be in a ton of light, and even then you had to crank the gain. The newer ones are going to be better, but I have not personally tried that. But I would say, though, if you're going to be looking to use a Blackmagic camera with a B4 lens, you should probably just get the Ursa broadcast, because it's made for that. And it gives you most of the same, if not all the same features that you get with the studio cameras. Maybe a few things here and there that are missing, but it's going to be better designed for that than the studio cameras are. So, alrighty. Have green and red tally indicators like the Canon XC protocol? I don't believe so. I think Sony only does red. So yeah. Do you use an external monitor with your camcorder? When we're shooting live events, absolutely we do. So we stick 7-inch monitors on the top of all of our cameras and use that for previewing video. And most of the time I actually give camera operators the opportunity to see a 4-up view, so a 2x2 grid of the first 3 cameras plus the program feed. And so that way they can see, well, if they're one of the first 3 cameras, they can see what their view is compared to everybody else. But that's part of the thing. Like, they can see what other camera operators are doing, so they're not giving me the exact same shot as everybody else. So it saves me a lot of effort as a technical director when the camera operators can see that, hey, somebody else has already got a wide, I don't need to get a wide. So I don't have to communicate that verbally. They can see one another, what they've got going on. So, yeah. I just received my NX800 today. I'm new to camcorders, so why would I need to adjust my shutter angle? So shutter angle is just another way of saying shutter speed. The two things are the same, just a different way of expressing it. So the shutter angle concept comes from film cameras that have a rotary shutter. And so when you're talking about shutter angle, you're talking about what portion of a circle is open as part of that shutter. So if you're talking about a 180-degree shutter, so 180 out of the 360 degrees is open and allows light to pass through to the film, or these days a sensor. How that relates to shutter speed, shutter speed is measured in fractions of a second. Shutter angle is measured in angles, or in degrees. So 180-degree shutter is half of 360. So if you want to convert that to shutter speed, you take half of your frame rate that you're shooting, and that gives you your shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second and you have 180-degree shutter, that means that each of your exposures, the shutter speed on your camera is 1/48th of a second. Similarly, if you're at a 90-degree shutter angle, that's 1/4 of 360. So you take your frame rate, divide it by 4, and that gives you your shutter speed. So the shutter angle concept is used in filmmaking. Shutter speed is used in the rest of the world. So they put both of those on these cameras for people who are coming from different backgrounds and understand where one versus the other. So there's kind of a rule, and again, rules are meant to be broken, but there's kind of a rule when you're shooting that you set your shutter speed to half of your frame rate. So if you're shooting 60 frames per second, you would want to do 120th of a second shutter speed. And one easy way to do that is to just set your camera to use a 180-degree shutter angle, and then it maintains that relationship no matter what your frame rate actually is. So yeah. Okay. What do you recommend? Prefer XAVC SL422 or XAVC SL420? I should really do a video on 420 versus 422. So I suspect you're probably already familiar, but for anybody who is not, so there's different ways of representing colors, and when you're talking about converting from RGB to the signal formats that we actually record in. So if you're not aware, video doesn't use RGB. So the signal going through my wire here, the signal recorded on a memory card, it's not RGB. It's what's it correct? It's YCRCB is what they call it. So basically what that means is the Y is the brightness, so it's kind of a black and white version of the image, and then your CR and CB are differences from that to the amount of red and the amount of blue in the image. The reason they do that is our eyes are a lot less sensitive to changes in color than they are changes in brightness, and so if we can reduce the amount of color information in an image, that will save on how much data that we have to store. So the numbers 420, 421, whatever, 444 are an indication of the ratio between the brightness information, amount of brightness information, and the amount of color information that is used as part of a video signal. So 422, for example, has half the color, half of information, much information used for color as it does for brightness. 420 means you're sharing color information across different scan lines. So instead of having one scan, all your color picture, your brightness and color information be retained as part of one scan line, it's actually shared across two. The 0 is a really weird way of indicating that, but 420 means you've got half as much color information as you had with 422. So the other part of that question, you're talking about XAVC-S, and XAVC, or actually you just say XAVC-SL in both cases. So, okay, so never mind that. But 422 is going to give you more color information than 420, which for a lot of things isn't going to make a huge difference. But if you were doing chroma keying, you would absolutely want to have the 422. And if you're in a situation where you can do 444, which this camera does not do, but if you could do 444 and you're doing chroma keying, you're going to get a cleaner key because you have more color information to work with when trying to do that chroma key. So I hope that makes sense. But 422 is going to is going to generate slightly bigger files than 420. But 420 can be good quality, like Blu-ray is 420, and people don't complain about the quality on that. Traditionally, there have been other formats that are 420 as well. Mini DV years ago was 411. 420 was used by HDV. So anyway, I don't want to go off on that too long. Okay, next question. A bit off topic, but your video on Nginx RTMP server was great. Got it working on Windows. Do you know how to get it working on a Mac? I've not tried, but I would assume that you could start with the same configuration file and just tweak like the paths, the file paths that are part of that. But you do have to make sure that you get the right version of the Nginx because most of them don't include that RTMP module as part of it. And it's not something you can add after the fact. It has to be compiled in. So either you compile your own or find one of the pre-made builds that includes that RTMP module as well. So this camera maybe have the same sensor and chip of the new Sony PXW-Z AM7. I don't know on that one. So I see the recording in maximum 10-bit 422 is that maximum is 422 is the SDMI HDMI out design. Yeah, it's going to be. SDI is almost always 422. SDI video format defaults to 422. There are ways of doing 444, but it's very, very rare. And it doubles, and well, it doesn't necessarily double, but it does mean you're dealing with significantly more data. So you have to go with a higher speed. In a lot of cases, if someone wants to do 444, it means you're doing dual link, so you're running 2 cables instead of 1. So the device has to support that. HDMI on this is probably going to be the same as most other cameras. It's also probably going to be using the YC RCB, which is going to be 422. So yeah, almost certainly the HDMI on this is going to be 422. So how would I check that? I don't know if I have any equipment that will allow me to check that. I could look into it, but yeah, it's almost certainly 422 on the output as well. Okay, don't you think this whole situation with camera updates is similar to the iPhone? Yes and no, but not so much in this product line. I mentioned earlier the Z150 is an 8-year-old model, so this particular portion of that product line has not had an update in 8 years, and this going from that older camera to this newer one was a huge jump. They have a couple. They do have a couple other cameras in this product line. This is also a replacement for the PXW-Z190, in addition to being a replacement for the 150. And then they have the 280, which is also available. And then they've kept around the Z90 as well, and then the consumer version of that one. But this is a big update from what they've had in a lot of ways. And so yeah, this is it's not like the iPhone where each year it's a small improvement on the last year. This is a big upgrade compared to the last camera they released in this line 8 years ago. So yeah, I think you can test gear in advance as much as you like, but you'll never really know how well it'll all work until you use it for a real shoot and run into real issues. Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the reasons that videos like this, where it's an unboxing and first look, are not that useful in terms of finding out if the camera is going to be any good. I mean, obviously, if you see something in here, this video that's going to be a deal breaker, and you know this camera is not going to work for you, you know, great. You know, it's good that you were able to determine that ahead of time. But until somebody gets this thing out in the real world and starts shooting with it in real situations, we don't really know how good it's going to be. I mean, I suspect it's going to be great. Sony that doesn't release bad cameras. They just they do their research. They put their time into it, and so yeah, I suspect this is going to work just great. So, all right. Thanks for explaining shutter angle. I'm a professional photographer, and I'm just getting into the video side. The shutter angle was just something I've never heard of. Yeah, it's a film term. So, yeah, I like shutter angle over shutter speed, so I don't forget to change the shutter speed if I change frame rate. Yeah, that gives you that half the frame rate for your shutter speed. So, I'm actually not a huge proponent of that concept. I think it sells people short on the possibilities. I go for a particular look, what I'm trying to achieve when I set my shutter speed. So I'm aware of that rule, and I often do set my shutter speed at half my frame rate. But there's other times when I'll do something different. You know, if I'm shooting sports, for example, I will very often go with this faster shutter, a slightly faster shutter than the half rule. Because it freezes motion better. It allows people who are watching to see, like, where's the ball? You know, instead of having a streak across the screen, you're actually able to make out where the ball is. You don't want to get too fast, because then it gets too clicky. Motion gets too abrupt, too chaotic. But there is a shutter speed that's going to be right for every situation, and it isn't necessarily the one that's half the frame rate. So, all right, Paul, how did I miss this? I've been editing. I thought we talked about that when we were texting today. I told you I was going to be doing a live stream, so yeah. All right, so by the way, 422 is the digital equivalent of S-video in the analog world. That is mostly true. 420 would probably be a better way of comparing to S-video. It's S-video. It only had two signals. It had the brightness, and then it had a single signal that combined with the chroma and the it's basically saturation and lightness. So yeah. Okay, excited for this. I am too. Obviously, I bought one. So yeah. I can't see it. I can't see the camera. That's right. Yeah, it's right there. So, unfortunately, that's on the wrong side. There we go. I'll move that over there so you guys can continue to see it as I'm doing questions. So, for iMag, latency is typically the biggest concern. For Blackmagic mixers, etc., there is, as far as I know, one frame sync delay, another one for scaling. How could using 5994 instead of 2997 tweak the latency? Absolutely, yes, it does. That's taking up a lot of screen. So yes, so very often the latency that is present in a camera or switcher or projector or TV or other processing, it's measured in frames. And so if your frames are shorter, then your total output latency is going to be lower as well. And it's not a one-to-one relationship, so you can't automatically say that, hey, by switching from 30 frames to 60 frames per second, you're going to get half the latency, but it's going to be in that ballpark. There's a little bit of inherent overhead anyway, but generally speaking, yeah, if you double your frame rate, then your latency should be about half. So if you're dealing with a situation where you need the most responsive signal and the shortest latency, then you can just go with the highest shutter speed or the highest frame rate that you can get away with. So I suspect this camera is going to be great too. I think you'll be very happy with it. So I'm expecting I will be. You know, I've always been happy with Sony cameras. They've never let me down on video cameras. So not that any manufacturers that I've used really have, with Blackmagic probably being the one exception. But yeah, definitely times to break the 180 shutter rule. Yeah, for sure. But when I hear people learning about filmmaking, they're kind of told that always set your shutter angle to be 180 degrees. Set your shutter speed to be half your frame rate. So yeah. Can you adjust all 4 channels of audio at the same time, or are there only 2 dials? There's only 2 dials on the side of the camera, but you can adjust the rest in the menu. So I mean, you do have to jump into the menu in order to get to those 3rd and 4th channels. But yes, you can absolutely control those. So yeah. Okay. S-Video has full chroma resolution vertically, but half horizontally, just like 422. 420 also has half vertical resolution, unlike S-Video. Yeah, and I didn't mean that as an exact relationship, but what I was kind of getting at is that the color information is cut down even more in S-Video than it is in 422. So S-Video, the color resolution is quite low. It's way lower. Like 411 may be a better way of saying it. But in addition to that, instead of having distinct signals for your CR and CB, which by the way for analog video is PRPB, instead of having separate signals for those, it was combined into one. So you got half the information. So you have lower resolution color information, and the amount of information that's used to represent those colors is even lower. So yeah, so S-Video, while much better than composite, was still very low resolution color. So thanks for the answers. Subscribe. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. So I assume you can record 4K internally, use the viewfinder on the LCD, and output SDI or HDMI. Yes, thankfully. So that was one of the big limitations of the 150 and the other cameras in that product line, that family. If you wanted to shoot in 4K, you had to choose whether you wanted to use the LCD screen or the HDMI output when you were recording. You couldn't do both. So as soon as you hit the record button on that camera, if you were outputting with the SDI, your screen would go black, and vice versa. So if you have the set where you want to prioritize the LCD, and when you hit record, the output, the SD or HDMI output would go black. So yes, this camera does overcome that limitation, so we don't have to worry about that any longer. So yeah, and I'm actually caught up. That's pretty amazing. So as you can probably tell, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so I don't want to go a whole lot longer. At this point, I've been going for an hour and a half, but I will stick around for a little bit longer if you guys have additional things you want me to show or talk about. Doesn't have to be questions specifically about this camera. It can be just about video in general, or even audio for that matter. But yeah, I'll stick around here for a little bit. So I've got a bunch more videos that I'm going to be shooting here in the next little while, but I do want to put out a little bit of a caveat that I might be doing a couple of videos that are a little bit off topic here for the next little bit. So anybody who's watched the channel for a while will know that back in early July I did a video about the EcoFlow batteries, battery power stations, and I just got a new one of those, and I wanted to do a video about that before anybody else. The new Delta 3 Plus isn't supposed to ship until October. Mine showed up on Saturday, and so I want to be doing a video about that and get some information out to the world about that, because I think there's a lot of questions about that. So that'll probably be the next video here on this channel. But yeah, let's see. Adjust your shutter speed to your light sources to avoid flickering. Just applying the 180 shutter rule might get you in trouble. So that is true, but frame rate does play into that as well. So because frame rate determines how often it's capturing an image. And so if you're shooting at 24 frames per second and you've got lights that are flickering at 100 times per second, those two numbers don't work together. So even if you set your shutter speed at 1/50th, which you can do on these cameras, which is going to be half of that 100, you're still going to have issues with flickering and going in and out as well. So in addition, these cameras also have rolling shutters, and so if the light is flickering at such a frequency that it doesn't match up with the way that it's sampling the sensor, you'll end up with visible banding going on in there as well. So, can you output SDI and HDMI at the same time? XF605 can, and Z200 seems like a pretty direct competitor. It seems like you can, based on what I saw in the menu. You didn't have to choose one or the other. It looked like you could do both, which is another upgrade from the other cameras as well. So, SRT included? Yes, it is. So you can do live streaming with RTMP, RTMP-S, or SRT in this camera. There are some restrictions on what you can do with SRT. SRT, I believe, does not support 4K, whereas RTMP versions, RTMP actually do. So yes, you can stream in SRT, but I believe it's limited to 1080. Did you talk about clear zoom or other sensor? Wondering what is new there. Okay, so this new camera has a 20 times optical zoom. I'll get my 150 up for this discussion here. The 150 and the other cameras in its family have a 12 times optical zoom. So it's quite an increase. Going from 12 to 20 times optical zoom on these. Both of these cameras have a feature that Sony calls clear image zoom, which crops in on the sensor and provides a little bit of artificial enhancement in order to give you additional zoom reach without having to have the expensive optics in order to do so. So in case of both of these cameras, when you're shooting HD, clear image zoom lets you double that zoom ratio. So this one's able to go out to 24 times, this one's able to go out to 40 times zoom. If you're shooting in 4K, you get 50% more. So this one gets you out to 18 times, this one will get you out to 30 times when you're using clear image zoom. A lot of people have been afraid of clear image zoom because it's a digital enhancement. In my experience, I have never seen any artifacts, undesirable artifacts, from going with clear image zoom compared to an optical zoom. The image quality is still extremely good when using that feature. Therefore, I just always enable it on all these cameras and use it all the time. It's never caused an issue. So I've been super happy with that, and being able to go out to 40 times zoom on this one when shooting HD, it's going to be amazing. So that's been limited to 24 times on this, so that's a huge, huge upgrade going into the new one. But anyway, it's clear image zoom is really cool, and one of the reasons you're able to get away with that is because the sensors on these cameras are capturing a lot more detail than what the video signal you're recording is capable of representing. So these have the equivalent of a 20 megapixel sensor on it, and 4K video is 8 megapixels. So even then, you crop in more in order to get a tighter view. You're not really losing much, if anything, in terms of detail. So, yeah. All right. Okay, Paul. Again, I've liked my EcoFlow. I've been using it on set. Awesome. So Paul actually bought one of mine from me. So yeah. Frame rate hasn't any influence on flickering, only shutter speed does. No, frame rate actually does. No, it does. It depends. There is a relationship there. So, yeah. I often see the Burano, set the Burano to 172 shutter angle to help with the flickering and banding. It helps very often in our case. Yeah. So, yep. Too bad it does not have a ref in or for iMag use. Yes, that would be amazing to get that, but you have to step up to, in Sony's line, you have to step up to the Z280 in order to get the Genlock reference input. So, yeah. This camera doesn't support SRT, 4K, or the protocol doesn't. I believe it's the camera, but I don't know. I mean, streaming protocols don't really care much about resolution and frame rate, so I suspect it's probably a camera limitation. And I don't know the reason for that. It's one of those obscure limitations that doesn't seem to have a reason behind it, but yeah. Digital zooming has been fantastic. It's never been a deal breaker on image for live events. Yeah, and so as Paul has worked with me on many, many events in the past, and we have always used the clear image zoom, and it's worked great. And that's very different than the digital extender feature that's available on this camera. That one, digital extender, does look bad because it's pixel doubling. So it's taking up pixels, making them twice as big. So you're losing half your resolution. So, off topic, NDI and NDI-HX being worse, having high frame delays when using for live events in iMag. Any hope of a better solution in the future? I love the hope of running one network cable to a PTZ. 2110 is supposed to address that. However, the affordable 2110 solutions, i.e. Blackmagic, have too much latency on them for iMag. So hopefully they'll get that resolved. They'll be able to figure out a way to fix that. But right now, their 2110 implementation has 2 to 3 frames of delay. And that's just too much for iMag. I should clarify, that's too much for your way of relaying your signal from your camera to everything else. Because I mean, cameras are going to have 1 to 2 frames of delay. Your switcher's going to have a frame of delay. Your projector's going to have more than that. So yeah. All right. I'm afraid of digital zoom in all my cameras, but trying to get over it because the tech is so much better these days. That is true, but you want to get something like clear image zoom, which is not just a straight digital zoom. It actually is taking advantage of the extra resolution of the sensor. So you have to look into what technology they're using and how they're pulling it off before you can make a judgment call as to whether it might be any good. But Sony uses the term clear image zoom to refer to this technology where they're using more information from the sensor when you zoom in. So, off topic, what lav are you using today? So this is the Sony UWP series. It's just the default lav that comes with that series. So I have not upgraded that microphone on there. Does the variable ND start off at completely clear? On older cameras like my FS5, the electronic variable ND cannot be completely clear. I saw an option in the menu for that, but what you have to watch out for, though, is that the mechanism that produces the variable ND can't do completely clear. So while the feature might be there, what's going to happen when you go from clear to not clear, you're going to see that wipe across the screen as the lens, or as the filter comes in and out of the optical signal path. So that's why they make it a configurable option on these, like whether you want to actually do that or not. So I will probably leave that turned off because I don't want to have a situation where rolling that knob causes that wipe across the screen. So, if you consider putting a Scarhoy blue pill into your trailer so you can convert your tally controls from your BM to your Sony kit. Well, I have a blue pill. I don't know how to. I haven't researched how you remotely control tally on these cameras. I know the 150s don't have the way to do it remotely. The newer ones might, so I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I do have the blue pill, so I can look into that. You can eliminate flickering if the exposure time equals an integer multiple of your light source's flickering interval. It's a relatively varying exposure start that hasn't any effect. So, yeah, it's all about ratios, right? So you want to make sure that your sensor is staying open for the same amount of time for each time your light flickers, if that makes any sense. So when there's a difference there, so you know, if your camera is shooting at with a shutter exposure time of 1/50th of a second, but your lights are 50.01, you're going to see them fade in and out. And so it's just better to use, when you can, to use lights that don't have flickering at all. So, yeah. Is the noise from the lav? Most likely you're hearing just room noise. This is an omnidirectional mic. This room is not silent. The air conditioner is currently running. There's a fan on the camera. I've got other things in the room that make noise, so you're probably picking up some of that. Yeah. Burano's variable starts at 0.6. Random info, just been using it a lot lately. And that's awesome. Yeah, so on this one, it starts at 2 stops, so 1/4. Yeah. Is it too much latency to have separate ATEMs for live stream and projector, or should you use only 2 ME for that situation? Well, what you do is you set it up so that your live stream comes after the one that you're using for iMag. So you know, for your live stream, it doesn't matter. I mean, you could have minutes of latency on there and no one's going to be the wiser, unless you're in a situation like this. But like the point is though, like if you're adding a couple additional frames of latency for your live stream over what you're doing for iMag, no one's going to know. So you'll be fine there. But if you can, doing a multiple ME switcher is going to make your life a lot easier. So I mean, because you have access to all your different sources for each of your different outputs. So yeah, using the auto framing function in this camera is something good to use in a live production. So discovered a little while ago that the SDI output on this camera does not. It shuts off when you use that auto framing feature. I believe the HDMI still works, so if you're able to get away with HDMI, then you might be able to make that work. But it's never going to be as good as a person. And the other issue is that it's all digital zoom, so you don't want to have it zoom in too much. At the same time, you also don't want to. You don't want to physically zoom in too much with optical, because then if somebody walks around, they're going to go out of frame. So there's going to be sort of a happy medium there. You stay wide enough on your zoom, and if someone's wandering around, they're not walking out of frame. But then you set the auto framing enough that it's able to zoom in and give you a tighter shot. Honestly, I think it's kind of a gimmicky feature. That's not something I ever see myself using, to be honest. But I have yet to try it, so I don't know for sure how good it's going to be. If it uses the same capabilities, the same feature, the same technology as the clear image zoom, then it might be okay to a point, as long as you're not going in much more than 2 times. Beyond that, you're getting into the point where you don't have enough information coming off the sensor. It's having to interpolate and generate its own fake data, which means your image would get soft. And the one of the videos I watched about this camera, they said that the auto framing feature does get soft if you zoom in more than 2 times, which makes sense based on how the camera is actually set up and works. All right. Off-topic question: how do you get the HDMI signal from MacBook to be in the 16 to 235 range to avoid clipping when going into the ATEM Mini? I've never really worried about that. Let's see, what could you do? You could do a lot. So you get one of the bidirectional microconverters, or one of the bidirectional microconverters, and build a LUT in Resolve, which maps the full 0 to 255 down to 16 to 235, and download that into your converter. That would take care of it. Some of Blackmagic converters support going the other direction, SDI to HDMI, expanding the color space. But going from computer to video, I don't know any products that have just like a check box you can check. But you could absolutely do it with a LUT. So yeah. Is it just me, or is the camera look kind of boring without the XD cam or 4K on the back of the monitor? Yeah, it is a little less stylish that way. So, this one has the, where did that come in? So, XD cam on there versus nothing. So it is a little more bland, but oh well. All right. I use aux on the mixer for iMag as a makeshift second ME, no fancy transitions, but worked well for our use case, especially when combined with the BitFocus companion. Yeah, so I mean, if you're just doing cuts and you don't need to do any sort of keying whatsoever, so if you don't need to do like lower third or anything, then that can work. It's, the poor man's version of a second ME. So we're kind of at a point now where 2 ME switchers are pretty affordable. I mean, the Constellation 2ME HD is $1,800 versus $1,000 for the 1ME. So yeah, it's more money, but 1 or 2 gigs would cover that difference. So yeah. All right, I caught up again. Let's see. What else? Other videos I have coming up. I wanted to do a video on USB-C and how it's kind of a mess. I just need to sit down and do it. I have all the equipment to do it. I want to do a video on equipment for doing diagnostics, doing testing of different types of signals, so SDI or Ethernet or fiber. So I've kind of been collecting some of that stuff. I want to be doing a video on that. Want to do a video on latency. Forget what else. I got a whole bunch of ideas, things that I want to be shooting. I just got to take the time to do it. So, real question here: how much lower does the lens sit compared to the Z150? Just curious, because using the Z200 on teleprompter might need a vertical spacer. I'll just pull the lens caps off. There you see. The other thing, I should probably pull this. I always keep my tripod plates on the bottom of my camera, so there is a little bit of offset there. I'll grab a screwdriver and take that off so we can do a fair comparison. So I've got one just out of frame here. The question is, if I have the right type of screwdriver out of frame. I might have to go digging just a little bit more to find the right type. Oh, there we go. That one will work. Okay, so yeah, we'll pull that tripod plate off of there and do a fair comparison of the 2 cameras. So, okay. All right, now let me lose the lower third there too. All right, so pull these off. So I made a decision several years ago that I was going to make sure that all the tripods that I buy, and all the tripod heads that I buy, use the same plate. And therefore, I'm able to leave the tripod plates on the cameras all the time. All right, so I will pull this one off. All right, you see it well enough there? They actually look like they're pretty close. So, you can see it better on that shot. Maybe a little bit better. But yeah, they're very, very close. So I wouldn't expect that you would need to do anything differently if you're going to mount one of those on a teleprompter. They are very similar that way. So. Okay. All right. You get Sony HD cameras like f800 and matching lenses pretty cheaply on eBay these days. Have you ever considered something like that? I'm at a point now where I'm not investing in HD equipment any longer. Everything I get, I'm doing 4K, and most of the broadcast world hasn't even moved to 4K, let alone retire their old 4K equipment. So for somebody who's going to be doing HD, you can get a pretty nice camera. It's going to be a little older, but those things are tanks. They're made to last forever. You can get an older camera for a decent amount of money. But if I'm investing in cameras like that, I'm going to want the full camera chain. I'm going to want to have the CCU and the remote control as well. So, between wanting 4K and doing the full camera chain, for me personally, buying those kinds of cameras on eBay is not really a great option. So, yeah. All right, Aaron, working again tonight on BMD's instant replay workflow video. Now they finally released a manual for it. So I'm going to assume it's okay for me to talk about this, Aaron. So Aaron has been working on doing a demonstration of the differences between vMix's instant replay and Blackmagic's through DaVinci Resolve. And so once he's got that done, he's gonna make that available, and I'm going to bring him on here on the channel, and we're going to talk about it. So kind of a little behind the scenes of what's happening. So he's basically just letting us know that he's going to be working at that yet again tonight. So I think it was a week ago, last Monday, when he was doing the first portion of the video. So it's going to be very revealing. So we'll see how Blackmagic's instant replay actually works. I have not had a chance to try it out myself. I still use vMix when I'm doing instant replay. So, but there's a lot of people out there wanting to know how well the Resolve workflow works. So, anxious to see. So I know there's going to be other people who are interested in seeing that as well. So, all right, okay, we have officially been going for, well, an hour and 45 minutes at this point. So, start the process of winding down. So get your last few questions in here, and we'll try and get those answered here before we go. So I'm not exactly sure when my next video here on this channel is going to be, but now that I have this situation here, in this little studio here in my basement, it sure is a heck of a lot easier to shoot this stuff than it was. So thanks for the tip of the LUT. I was actually already considering that. I just can't believe that there isn't some more solution for this very common issue. Most people just haven't worried about it, to be honest. I mean, you just plug in the computers and hope that it's okay. If you have black text on white background, there will be functionally no difference in doing the conversion versus not. It's really only when you have video playback or images that are showing up on the computer, that it becomes noticeable. So, and in that case, it just makes them more contrasty, which some people actually like. So, yeah. Are you at all interested in the Rode product that's being announced tomorrow? Spoiler, it's probably a switcher aimed at content creators. I don't know the details on it yet, and they have not contacted me, so I'm not under NDA to not talk about it. But I don't know details on what it's going to be, but yes, the word on the street is that it's going to be some sort of video switcher. So probably doesn't interest me personally. Most of the stuff that I do is going to require higher end gear than anything that they're going to be producing. But I imagine it's going to be a good product for a lot of different people. And Rode does produce some good products. They're, what do they call it? The Podcaster? Is that not the name of it? I looked into that as a little portable audio mixer. Ultimately, it didn't have the right features for what I needed, but it could be, this new thing could be actually be pretty cool. So I don't know if this question has been asked, but what camera are you using as your main camera? So for my studio here in my basement, this camera that I'm shooting with right now is Sony PXW-Z200. And then the one over here is an NX80. The one overhead is the FXR-A700. And this one right here is a Sony ZV-E10, I believe. It's the APS-C size version of their podcasting camera. So 4 different models, 3 of which are in the same family, so those were easy to make match. This one right here, this camera, it took a fair amount of tweaking to get a look that was close. It's still not right. Rodecaster, yes, thank you. So this one is still not a good match. You can, like for my shirt, it goes from kind of a white to a very, almost a cream color. And that was the best I could do with the settings that the camera has. But I wanted something that was inexpensive. I didn't want to shell out a ton of money for all the cameras here in my basement studio. So, and the Z90 I already had, so it was only the other 3 that I had to buy for the studio here. So, yeah. Yeah. So, what other questions you guys have? Let's give it another 5 minutes and then we'll wrap it up. So. Anybody have any big events going on? I assume most of the people who are watching this stream do shoot live events, because I mean, that's kind of my core audience. But that's interesting. Yeah. No questions just yet. So let's see. At some point, I will be doing a second video in my audio production series, but I've kind of lost some of my motivation because the first one didn't really get very many views. I put a lot of time into that one, and building the software to do the demonstration on how audio signals actually work, and nobody watched it. And so it's like, how much effort do I want to put forth for that series? It's good information, and just apparently not something people are interested in. So I'm sort of questioning whether I want to put a ton of effort into more videos into how to produce audio, high quality audio. I know it's something that most people who shoot video should know more about, but most of them don't seem to be that interested, unfortunately, because good quality audio actually matters more than good quality video. All right. We run iMag with all BMD Ursa setup. Should we add reference genlock to all? So that would allow you to reduce your latency by 1 frame, basically, the way it boils down. So your Ursa has pretty good low latency already, and your switcher, as long as you're not forcing the switcher to do a frame rate or scaling, frame rate conversion or scaling, should be outputting the signal with pretty low latency. But if you were to run have gen lock for all your sources. So you have a gen lock source that you feed to all your cameras and to your switcher. Then get your camera set up right. You have to advance the timing a little bit on the cameras in order for them to generate the video ahead enough for the switcher. But once you do that, you'll cut your latency down by as much as a full frame. So, yeah, if you want that additional frame, then yeah, I would do it. Alrighty, I bought some old used ENG B4 2/3 lenses that I mounted with a micro four thirds sensor, GH6, and image quality is good. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that the image quality is good, but you're asking a lens designed for, in this case, a 2/3 inch lens to produce an image for a sensor that's quite a bit bigger than that. So there's two ways to handle that. Like, one, you could always make sure that you zoom in more so that image spreads out and covers the image sensor, or you get something like a Metabones adapter in order. I don't know if they make one for that particular use case, but you get something like an adapter that actually expands the image. Downside to both of those, you're losing light, and you're also asking the lens to resolve more detail than it was technically designed to do. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you for great content as always. Always helps out finding a little bit of extra info we need about new product, as well as how other people are going to setting up their rigs. Yeah, I'm glad to do it. So, yeah. I was a little iffy on whether I was going to invest in this camera, because I really do suspect that this is going to have different color rendering than my other cameras. Which means I probably won't be able to intermix it, which kind of reduces some of my incentive to do so, because it means I can't really use this for live production until I buy 2 to 3 more of them. I don't know that I'm wanting to make an investment that big when I already have 9 cameras of the other family that work pretty well. So, but we'll see. Yeah. Not a question, but thank you. Your videos and streams are always wonderful. So thank you for sharing. Glad to do so. And Paul, running camera at the end of the week for Fanex SLC iMag only. You're familiar with that one? Yeah, I've actually shot with Paul on that event before. So I think I've only done it the one time. They like to use the same people over and over, and I'm not in their inner circle. But at the same time, acting as a camera operator is not my strongest skill. I do okay, but it's not my strongest skill. So, yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who do a better job of it than I do. So. All right. Yeah, your channel's pretty cool. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. So, yeah, I try to do things a little bit different than some of the other channels that are out there. But I will say, though, at the same time, that a lot of the other channels that are doing this sort of content are not producing as much content as they used to. Some of them have just kind of gotten burned out, or run out of things that they want to say or whatever. So, but I don't ever intend to do that. There's a lot to say about video production, and there's new gear coming out all the time, and new technologies that are being incorporated all the time. I enjoy doing this, so I intend to keep it up. I mean, we're now at 8.5 years that I've been doing this channel. So, yeah. All right, got someone who just became a member. Awesome. Thank you, Marshall. Appreciate that very much. So, just so anybody who's curious, the benefits of membership on this channel, the main one is you get access to videos ahead of time and without advertising. So I try and release videos for members a day early. Can't always, and if I'm doing some time-sensitive content, I'll have to put videos out sooner than that. But I try to always release videos ahead of time, and I always do video versions that don't have the YouTube advertising turned on. So there is that. Members also get access to my Sketchpad software. I have promised that I would do live streams, Q&As, or something similar for members. And I've tried that a number of times, but nobody ever shows up, and so I kind of got out of the habit. But if there is interest, I would absolutely go back to doing live streams just for members, and that includes both Patreon memberships as well as YouTube memberships as well. But anyway, so that there is that. do intend to do other stuff. I do a handful of other types of videos for members as well. So when I have the opportunity to do a behind the scenes for an event, I publish those for members, which I intentionally don't do for the general public any longer for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, so membership does have some privileges and some benefits. So anybody who's interested in those things, that's how you can get access to that. Paul says, yeah, I wish I could have you on that show. You're talking about FanX. So it's definitely a fun show to work. But as mentioned, like it's a bunch of insiders, people who've been doing it for years. Paul is among them. How many years have you been doing that, Paul? I know it's been a lot. Yeah, so they like using the same people. They like using the same people over and over again. It's going to be sad if it doesn't match my X70s. I hadn't considered that. Well, here's the issue. So this camera, it seems to be developed by a different team, and it's designed to match the FX6, which does have a different look than their camcorder style cameras. So this very likely is going to, color-wise, be quite different than the cameras in that the X70s, like Z150 / whatever family, right? So, yeah. Paul, you're being modest. Doug has a fantastic camera up. That's giving me a little too much credit. I do fine, but I'm not anywhere near as good as Paul is. So, Paul, I would say, is one of the best camera operators in Utah, and in addition to being a good friend. So, yeah. Do you prefer fixed lens or interchangeable full frame or ENG cameras? So I kind of covered that at the beginning of the stream, but it depends on what you're shooting. I mean, for the sort of thing that I do, which is event videography, so business conferences, concerts, sporting events, those kinds of things, I prefer camcorders or ENG cameras by a pretty wide margin. They're just designed for doing that kind of thing. One of the big ones is that these have a wide zoom range on them. So this one has 20 times from wide to tight. You're going to have a hard time finding an affordable lens for, especially full frame, that's capable of doing that. And in most of those situations, you're multiple cameras with different lenses, or you got to spend a ton of money to get a lens that's capable of doing that. So there is that. The other issue with a lot of those cameras is that the lenses are not parafocal. So as you zoom in and out, the lens will go in and out of focus. These don't do that. They're designed specifically to handle that properly. The other thing is, with a lot of those, you're talking about a large sensor. When the larger the sensor, you're going to be dealing with a shallower depth of field, which for certain workflows is ideal and gives you a more interesting, more cinematic look. But it also means that your camera operator has to be really be on the ball in terms of making sure that your focus is always good, your shot is always in focus. So, it's just a different deal. You know, if you're shooting, if you're in a situation where you're shooting a subject that's moving around a lot, if you're shooting on a large sensor, your camera operators are going to be frustrated, have a difficult time maintaining focus all the time. I've mentioned this a few times. I was back at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I was hired to shoot some boxing instruction, and the guy who hired me asked me to shoot on his Canon C300 with the 70 to 200 millimeter f2 2.8 lens at 2.8 the entire time. And you got this boxing instructor, he's moving around the entire time trying to demonstrate how things do, and they're doing these exercises. Now, I don't know if I got more than a few seconds of that footage in focus over the course of the 2 hours of the event, just because the depth of field at 2.8 on that size of sensor is incredibly shallow. You know, you're talking where someone's nose and tip of their nose is out of focus and their eyelash is in focus, but their cheekbone is out of focus again. I mean, it's just incredibly difficult to get focus in that kind of situation. And even autofocus can't keep up when you're dealing with a depth of field that's that shallow. So there are different workflows and different needs, different situations. So you just kind of have to decide based on what type of thing that you're shooting, which is the right way to go. And for the sort of things that I do, this style camcorder is really about the ideal way to go. If I was shooting movies, I would never use this camera. I mean, it's not meant for that. If I was shooting movies, then I would get something. I would get something meant for that purpose. You know, something large sensor, shooting with lenses that have large apertures. You know, very low t-stops, and yeah, it's just different. So, alrighty, Paul, 12 years probably. Is it only 12? I would have thought more than that. So yeah. I know it's a bit pricey, but check out the Yamaha DM7. I don't have that kind of money to buy an audio mixer. Yeah, the DM7 looks pretty cool. I mean, obviously Yamaha is trying to produce, and they're creating a new product line to sort of supplement or replace some of their older lines, like the QL or maybe even CL. But yeah. All right, apologies if it's already been addressed, but how's the zoom speed? The number one thing I need for sports. I didn't really address that, so let's actually do a small test here. So I'll switch over to the output of this camera. So we'll go to box with picture-in-picture. All right, so here's full wide. I'm gonna do a couple different tests here. So we'll do one fastest zoom. Okay, so there's not super fast, but okay. Now let's do the slow crawl, because that's always the one that I miss. Oh, me likey. That is a very usable slow zoom. I like that a lot. That's way more usable than the Z150. And obviously wouldn't necessarily use that for sports, but you know, if I'm doing a talking head and I want to very slowly zoom in, that makes me very happy. I like that a lot. That's way better than the 150 in terms of the slow speed. So yeah, let me use the rocker here and see. Oh, that's still on fast. Oh, it's variable speed. So the starts and stops are still a little bit abrupt, but it does have some momentum. It's less abrupt than the cameras used to be, that's for sure. But I do like that slow zoom. That makes me very happy. That's one of the things that's sort of frustrated me with the 150. Creepy zoom, yes. Okay, alrighty, yeah, I like that. That alone will encourage me to to speed up acquisition of these cameras and moving to. So yeah, I had a bias towards camcorder ENG, and I think Doug has helped convince me and present a good argument, evidence why. So it really depends on what you're shooting. You know, as mentioned, you know, I would not use these cameras if I was shooting a movie. They're just not meant for that. So, yeah. Is there a reason that narrative film crews often use more than one person to operate a camera? Absolutely, there is. It's so that the DP, the director of photography, can focus on getting the shot and not have to worry about technical things like exposure and focus and things like that. And that's why you have a dedicated person who does those jobs. So yeah, that's the whole reason behind it. And Paul, who's in the chat here, a good friend of mine, known for many years at this point, his main job is first camera assistant, which ultimately means he's responsible for setting up the camera, but he also does focus pulling, and that's so that the DP doesn't have to worry about it. So Paul, if you wanted to expound a little bit more in the comments about why that is, that would be very insightful to have your opinion on that, because I mean that is what Paul does for a living, so you can get firsthand from him on that. So, I was holding off on a purchase of this camcorder until there were some reviews on it. The jury is still not out yet, but I'm edging closer to adding this camcorder to my collection. It seems, I mean, from what I've seen for the 2 hours that I've had access to one, it seems like a pretty cool camera. It addresses quite a few of the little annoyances that I've had with the 150. Let's see, kind of slow. Is there a speed zoom setting similar to some older Sony cameras? There was one for the top handle. Let's actually go through the menu and take a look and see what control we have over that. Whoops, that's the wrong one. So we want to go this. There we go. So, all right, let's clear off the comment here and go into the menu, and we'll see. So, okay, so. Speed zoom, I don't know what that is. Let's try turning that on and then zooming in again. Okay, yeah, there you go. Way faster. So, okay, so speed zoom that gives you the ability to zoom in and out a lot faster. So. But yeah, I like that slow crawl. That's so nice. Okay, all right. Eric, that is sharp, yes. Smooth, yes. Holy moly, that's a creepy zoom, nice. Does the Z200 have shot transition? If you're thinking of the same feature that I'm familiar with from some of their older Sony cameras, where you set up shot A and set up shot B and have a button to press to transition between them, I don't think so. I didn't see that anywhere. So, yeah. That is a nice controlled slow zoom. Yep, thank you. Thankfully. So is this camcorder better than Sony Z90, Z190, or Z280? Yes, yes, and probably yes. I'll say it that way. Yeah, it's definitely going to be better than the Z90 or the Z190. Whether it's better than the Z280, I suspect it probably is, for most things. It's a different camera. I mean, this is a single chip 1-inch sensor. The Z280 is 3-chip, I believe 1/3 inch, or is it two? Is that one 2/3 inch? 2/3, I think. Okay, the 280 is the 2/3 inch, and the 190 is the 1/3 inch. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Can you do presets with slow zoom and bit focus and remote control with this thing? Oh yeah, I was gonna do the iPad app on this one. Probably a little too late into the stream to do that, but I would definitely play with that. So the iPad app on this to control this is supposed to be pretty capable. So yeah. Okay, alrighty. If you decide to invest in these cameras, would you sell the others? If so, any idea on price? I've kind of come to the conclusion that selling old cameras is not necessarily the right move for me, because it seems like inevitably I end up doing some event where I need them. Or in the case of the way things are going for me now, I have multiple events in one day where I need to be covering more than one event at a time. So, yeah. With my other cameras being as capable as they are, it would not make any sense for me to sell those. I mean, they're not as high end as this camera, and they have some limitations for sure, but they're plenty good for most of the types of events that I do, and so it would be kind of silly for me to sell those cameras. Yeah.
So Paul, responding to the description about those jobs. So I'm the second part of the camera operation. I'm at first AC most of the time, operate the lens most of the time. So a little further, I take measurements all day long, make sure the field of focus is taken into consideration for the storytelling. Of course, it's up to the DP for storytelling, but the art of focus pulling is real. So yes, there is absolutely an art to it. It's not just I need to focus to this point, whatever. It's like they're controlling the focus point in the shot is part of the narrative. So you're directing the viewer's eye to what part of the story you're trying to tell. So it absolutely is a creative position, as much as any else, as much as any other. So, but yes, so that is part of the narrative. The whole job of creating a movie is telling a story. Incidentally, I've been wanting to make a video about how to improve the work that we do as live video producers. I've shot the video a couple times, and I've not been able to convey the idea the way that I want to. But when someone asks me, what can I do to make my video productions better, my answer for the last little while has been to remember that your job is to tell a story. And that's true even for those of us who are documenting live events. So I so want to produce a video expounding on that, but I haven't found quite the right way to do it. But even if we're shooting a sporting event, we are still telling a story. And anybody who wants to do a good job at that task needs to remember that their job is to tell a story. And that includes everybody that's part of it, the camera operators, the technical director, the guy running audio. Everybody is involved in telling a story. And once you sort of put yourself in the shoes of somebody who wants to participate in that story, you can do a better job at doing your video productions. So I wish I was better able to express that concept and produce a video, shoot a video about that and help describe what that means for all the different positions that are part of producing video. But I have not found the right way to do that just yet. So anyway, so this idea of having a narrative and telling it isn't just part of film. It's part of what we do as live video producers as well. So, okay. All right. Trying to find my Sony RX10 IV, the best Sony camcorder with a 1-inch sensor. The lens says Zeiss f2.4. Well, it's not particle. It has a fast PDAF, and it's 24-600 optical zoom with barely a 4K crop. There are definitely a lot of advantages to that particular model. I've looked at that RX10 series, and tried to figure out a way I can incorporate those into my productions. And I've not been able to figure out a great way to do that because they are designed mostly for photography, and it's a small body, so you lose a lot of the external controls. But I don't doubt whatsoever that you're able to get some fantastic footage with that camera. So, Eric, fast and sharp. Yes, this camera does seem to be fast and sharp. And Marshall, thank you, I'm sold. So, yeah. RX10 IV has all the shooting codecs, S-Log2, S-Log3. Well, it's 8-bit. It's easy to color grade. All right. Does this dynamic range match with A7 IV standard picture profile? Thank you. I don't know the technical details on that. Level full video on the remote control options. Yeah, so I plan to do it. My voice is about gone, if you can't tell. And I have other things that I need to be doing tonight as well. Okay, Z280 is 3-chip half-inch. That's right. Okay, thank you for the correction. Yeah, so the 190 is 3-chip 1/3 inch. So, okay, thank you. Appreciate that correction there. How do you feel about Companion these days? I know you previously thought it was not reliable enough. It's definitely gotten better than it was, but I I still have issues with it crashing. I mean, I do use it, and it's not like I've completely banned it from my productions or anything like that. I do use it for almost all the productions I have out of my trailer. I've got 3 Stream Decks sitting up on my front desk, and I have several other Stream Decks throughout the trailer, and those are all talking to Companion for various different things. But it still crashes once a day at least. You know, I have issues with the software just crashing, going down, and stopping working. So it's come a long way. The developers have done a better job about containing the damage that can be done by the various modules, the various plugins that are there. But it still crashes. I mean, I still have issues with it. And I know there's a lot of people out there who say it's because you're running it on Windows. I've tried it on Mac and I've tried it on a Raspberry Pi, and the results were exactly the same. It's the software itself. It's not the platform that it's running on. So, but it is better. The one thing that still makes me nervous is communication with the ATEM switchers. And the reason for that is primarily because the ATEM protocol is not documented. Blackmagic has intentionally not let anybody know how that communication protocol works. And while the module that Companion uses is gotten pretty good, it's still not perfect. And I've seen issues with ATEM switchers acting up with that being a part of the equation. So I've landed at a point now where, for critical productions, generally speaking, I do not allow Companion to talk to my ATEM switchers. I'll allow it to talk to other stuff, but I don't allow it to talk to my ATEM switchers, just because I can't afford to have my switcher go down, which Companion has done to me a few times. It's actually caused my ATEM to just stop working, stop responding. So, yeah. Catalyst Browse is rumored to offer real-time in Sony cameras. So they have a different app for this. It's called Monitor and Control. So, yeah, it's supposed to allow you to monitor up to 4 cameras simultaneously, actually see live video feeds from up to 4 cameras, and control nearly every aspect of the camera. I found their SDK for that communication protocol, and it's pretty complete. So if somebody didn't like the Monitor and Control app, they could develop their own. And it's a protocol. The protocol is based on, it uses HTTP, so it wouldn't be too hard for somebody to write, replace. I've had a decent experience with Companion Pi. I haven't had any issues with crashing, but I've only used it on a Raspberry Pi 4B and a Mac Mini. So much of it has to do with which modules you have installed. Some are written better than others. The time I did the live video, or did the video on my channel about how Companion was unreliable, the module that turned out to be the biggest reason for my issues was the one for controlling the hyperdeck. It had not been coded or tested to work with 4K, devices recording in 4K. And it turns out that whenever the hyperdeck would send a message to a Companion saying, I'm operating in 4K mode right now, the hyperdeck module would crash, and it would bring down all of Companion at that point. And so that's why it was happening to me all the time, because I do shoot in 4K a lot. All the videos I do here for my YouTube channel, including like this live stream, it's all 4K. And that sent me down a course where I took the time to actually look at the source code for a lot of those modules. And for anybody who's not aware, my day job is in software development. I've been doing software development professionally since 1984, so 40 years at this point. I kind of know what I'm doing at this point. And after looking at the source code for Companion, I was even more hesitant to use it as part of my productions, because so much of it was just very poorly written, clearly written by amateurs who didn't know the precautions that they need to take in order to do things safely and without having the risk of crashing and causing equipment to malfunction. So I backed off for quite a while and just almost completely refused to use it. But a lot of those things have been cleaned up. The HyperDeck module now is much better. Whoever went through it took care of a lot of those issues, added proper error handling, things like that. And we're seeing more and more of that over time. But it's still a project that's being written by a bunch of people who are not professional developers and or don't have the time to do things the right way. So it's not meant to be reliable. I mean, if it was, they wouldn't make the project open source for anybody to contribute to the way that they have. So containing the damage, yes, but that's realistic. Realistically, that's what's going on, because initially, up until version 3 something or other, any one of the modules could cause the entire product to crash. So if there was any bug by any of the modules that you're using, it could bring down the entire thing. In my case, I'm using quite a few. You know, I'm communicating with my Yamaha mixer, I'm communicating with my Behringer X32, I'm communicating with audio DSPs, I'm communicating with my video hubs, I'm communicating with smart view monitors I have in my trailer. All this stuff, and you know, if any one of those modules acts up in the past, that can bring down the whole application. So they've done a better job of keeping that isolated, containing the damage. But again, it still crashes on me at least once every 24 hours. I can't leave it overnight. If I leave it overnight and come back in the morning, it'll be crashed for sure, without a doubt. So, okay, my voice is about gone. I have to wrap this up. But thanks everybody for watching. I will be doing some additional follow-up content on this camera. But for anybody who is just kind of wondering what my initial thoughts are, it looks like a fantastic camera, especially for the $4,000 price. It includes some stuff that I hadn't seen previously on cameras that are more expensive. It has some stuff that even the 280 doesn't have. It looks really, really nice overall. My only reservation for, about including it in my productions is whether I can make it color match with my other cameras. So, and that's just going to require some experimentation. Well, spending a little bit of time with it and seeing if the color settings, which it has, which do seem to be pretty comprehensive, are going to be enough to get it to match my existing cameras. So I'll spend some time figuring that out. But otherwise, looks great. I'm very, very optimistic. This is going to be a fantastic camera for doing live streaming. So anyway, okay. But thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for watching. If you have any other questions about this camera, you can certainly leave those in the description, or sorry, the comment section down below. Brain's going too. You leave that in the comment section down below, or come join us over on Discord. And you can get there https://djp.li/discord. If you want more information about this camera, or you're thinking about buying it, you can go to djp.li/Z200, and that will take you to a page on my site which links to the Sony's product information page, and there's also links to buy from Amazon and from Adorama. I don't remember if I put B&H on there or not, but those links are affiliate links, and they do help quite a lot. If I get enough of you guys clicking on that, then I can actually invest in more of these and include those as part of my productions. So anyway, okay, that's going to do it. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day.